Yes, it is true that Microsoft is looking to launch an app store on the iPhone. I'm Mike and welcome to Mike X Apple. Let's go ahead and dive in. If we go back in time to Microsoft launching their cloud streaming service, they tried really hard to get on the Apple App Store. And basically they weren't able to. They were denied because Apple does not allow cloud streaming services for games on the App Store. Their rule is if you have games on the App Store, they have to be individually rated by Apple. Now, if you're familiar with gaming, the ESRB already rates the games, but those ratings are not good enough, I guess, for Apple. So they want to rate each game themselves. So the only way that they would allow those games on the App Store would be to make an app for each of those games so Apple could rate, which wouldn't make any sense for like a streaming service. Like you wouldn't want to download an app each time you want to stream something. So right now, the way that xCloud exists is through the web version of the app. So you have to use Safari, then you can create a shortcut on your home page. Then it's similar to using like any other app. There are some other limitations. It doesn't perform as well as a native app. But right now, Microsoft is working their way around that. And basically, the way they want to do that is through the Digital Markets Act in the EU. By March 2024, Apple basically has to allow third-party app stores on the iPhone to comply with this Digital Markets Act. So Microsoft is planning to take advantage of this by offering not only their own games, but games from third parties. They're also in the process of acquiring Activision, who owns King, who owns Candy Crush. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a very popular mobile game, or it was at a time. It's still popular. It still brings in millions of dollars a month. But essentially, they want to be able to start their own mobile marketplace. So according to the story from MacRumors, if this were to happen, it would probably take place in the EU initially, and then Apple is probably eventually just going to allow third-party app stores in general after it makes the change in the EU. So Microsoft might only have an app store in the EU at first, and then eventually when Apple rolls out this change to all versions of iOS, then it would be basically on all of the iPhones. So that's what Microsoft wants to do eventually, and I'm sure that Epic Games probably take advantage of this too, because this is also what they wanted. Apple had this whole thing with Epic Games and Fortnite being removed from the App Store. I won't get too far into it, but basically Epic intentionally broke Apple's policies in regards to collecting money from people by using alternate pay methods, and they essentially removed the game from the store. They're still going through litigation about it now, but ever since then, Fortnite has not been on the App Store, and Epic has already said that they want their own App Store on both the iPhone and on Android phones, and they want it to be an easy process. Technically on Android phones you can sideload stuff, you can add app stores if you want to, but you have to kind of be a savvy user to know how to do that. So they were also accusing Google in their version of Android of making it more difficult for people to discover apps if they're not in the Google Play Store, which, yeah, that is true. I mean, a lot of people just go to the Play Store to download stuff. They're not going to seek it out elsewhere unless they're maybe a little bit more savvy user or they're looking for something specific. So that's the tea right now around this whole situation. So we'll see what happens with this come March 2024. But you know it's available right now. The iPhone 14 and the iPhone 13. Yes, I'm talking about phones that are currently out instead of talking about phones that might exist in the future. There's been a report from Display Supply Chain Consultants, or DSCC, that the iPhone 14 Plus is actually outselling the 13 Mini, which is not surprising. I mean, personally, I didn't have an iPhone 13 Mini or any of the mini phones at all, but I always thought it was a really cool phone, and I thought it was great to have a mini version of a phone, because most people, yeah, they do prefer bigger phones, but the people who don't are kind of stuck with just getting a big phone. Like the regular iPhone is still pretty big, and obviously the Plus and the Max are huge. I've had a Max and I've gotten used to the size, and I really enjoyed it now. Just for a small update on that, I really do like the Max now. I hated it initially, but now that I got the 14 Pro Max, I really like it. But for those people that wanted a smaller phone, it kind of sucks, but it didn't sell. And Apple's a business, so they're not going to keep something around that didn't sell. But according to DSCC, the 14 Plus is basically blowing it out of the water. So it's not really a surprise. It's a bigger phone and it's cheaper than the Pro, like than the regular Pro. Before you had to go all the way up to the Max just to get the biggest iPhone. Now they made a more affordable one. I think it makes more sense from a monetary standpoint for Apple. From a consumer standpoint, of someone that doesn't want to spend like $1,100 just to get the biggest phone, like physically the biggest screen, it made a lot of sense to do the Plus. I wish personally they would have kept the Mini around because I think it was a really cool phone, but I understand why they got rid of it. Just like they're supposed to be getting rid of the buttons with the iPhone 15 Plus, which I've talked about in some of my previous videos, but we have pictures. We got some CAD leaks that show the iPhone 15's uni-volume button. I guess it's not a real button because the rumor is it's supposed to all be solid state. They're basically combining both the volume buttons into one thing. And I don't know how I feel about it yet. I mean, Apple did really well with their haptic buttons on the iPhone 7 and 8. So I have no doubt that they'll pull it off. And it would reduce the chance of failure from buttons on the phone if they didn't have any buttons, obviously. But also, the troubleshooting part of me is always like, well, what if something goes wrong and I need to do one of those resets where I, press the volume up and power, whatever the combination is. I don't even remember what the combination is, but I have muscle memory for it. Like, if you ask me what you have to do to reset the iPhone, if it gets stuck, I don't remember. Like, I can't remember to tell you. I'd be like, just give me the phone, and I would do it really quick. So in my mind, I'm like, is this still going to work if there's no actual buttons? Like, if all the buttons are software, essentially, like there's nothing to physically press, is this going to work in a situation where my iPhone freezes or is acting stupid and I need to do one of those hard resets? I believe it'll probably work, but I don't know. I'm just always a little skeptical when we get rid of buttons. I'm scared of the buttonless life, but I'm sure we'll be fine. The final thing I want to talk about today is the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Yes, we're doing another iPhone 15 rumor, and that is about the bezels. So there's a new rumor going around, and I don't even know why this matters. There are certain things like the notch and the bezels that some people find important. I definitely think the dynamic island is better than the notch, but like I just don't pay that much attention to that part of the screen, so I don't care. Like, I never cared about the notch, it never bothered me. Same thing with the bezels, like I just ignore them. Like, mentally they're not there. But also, at least with the bezels, if they do shrink them, then you do get a little bit more screen around the phone. It makes it slightly bigger, and that's what the rumor is. It's rumored that the Pro Max may have the thinnest bezels in the world. The top flight bezels of the world, Craig. That didn't even make any sense as a joke. Even from a Friday perspective, that didn't make sense. Anyway, the rumor is the iPhone 15 Pro Max may have 1.55 millimeter bezels, which would be even thinner than the current thinnest bezels in the world, which apparently is the Xiaomi 13, which has 1.81 millimeter bezels. So this is true that Pro Max, the bezels, it just might be insane. It might be insane. I mean, like I said, I don't care that much, really. Like, is it enough for me to get a new phone? Probably not. I'm going to be honest. I'm probably not upgrading this year. I feel this 14 Pro Max is probably going to be a 2 or 3 year phone for me, but we'll see what happens. But yes, if this is true, we're going to get solid state buttons, or we're going to have the thinnest bezels in the world. At least on the Pro Max. Apparently the Pro is also going to have smaller bezels, but they won't be as thin. So sorry, if you're just a regular iPhone 14 Pro fan, you may not get the thinnest bezels in the world. But I'm going to make the thinnest excuse to get out of here, which is I'm going to go drink some Starry. That's that soda that replaced Sierra Mist. I've been buying it a lot. I don't want to talk about it, but I want you to talk about these stories in the comments. Let me know how you feel about the thinnest bezels in the world. How do you feel about the solid state buttons? How do you feel about potentially having different app stores on the iPhone? Again, let me know in the comments. You have a good one. Peace out.